What's up, everyone? In today's video, we're going to be going over some basic punches for Muay Thai. Before we do that, let's talk about being in the right stance. When I'm starting off in Thai boxing, we learn two stance, right? We learn the kicking stance and the punching stance. The kicking stance is when I'm much taller. This allows me to block easily with both legs, use my teep more effectively and control the distance without the threat of getting my leg kicked. And then the boxing stance, obviously, I'm a little bit wider. My hips are pointed forward. My lead shoulder is bladed to make myself a smaller target up top. But I want to be mindful not to blade my lower body, because now I'm vulnerable for low kicks, or I'm more vulnerable than this stance where my toes are pointed forward. Here, I can lift to block, not as well as from the kicking stance, but I can distribute my weight backwards and lift to block. Or a lot of fighters will choose to take the low kick and then counter off with punches and their own kicks. And that works as long as your toes are pointed forward and you have a strong base leg. If my toes are pointed in and I'm more bladed, when I get kicked, that leg's gonna come out from under me. So I need to be mindful of the stance. Again, we have the kicking stance and the boxing stance. The boxing stance, we call that the low stance, because I'm bending my knees, I'm getting lower, I'm grounded so that my punches are gonna have more power. Okay, with that said, let's get into the punching. From the punching stance, from the low stance, we're gonna work the first round, individual strikes. So that's the jab by itself, the cross by itself, the lead and rear hooks by themselves, and the lead and rear uppercut techniques by themselves. When you're repping these strikes, I want you to cycle through focusing on various aspects. The first aspect, fluidity and technical proficiency kind of married together. Get the flow, get the sequence, get the body mechanics down of the strike. And then from there, focus on speed. Cycle through that several reps. From there, add in power, focusing on just power. Then take the fluidity, the speed, and the power and cycle through repping those techniques over and over again. The secret here is to try to be consistent with each rep. So we're gonna work the jab. From my kicking stance, I can step into a lower stance and work from here. Or if you feel more comfortable just starting in your boxing stance, that's fine too, okay? Starting in your low stance. So we're gonna work the jab. I extend my jab out straight. This is my lead hand. It extends forward, and as it extends, my hips and shoulders rotate. My arm corkscrews so that I'm striking with my top two knuckles. Notice what I mean by that. When I say corkscrew, my wrist twist as I extend. This is important. So I start with just the fluidity, right? Just the body mechanics. I want to get that down. Good technical reps. From there, add the speed. Once you have the speed, add the power. From here, let's work on the cross. Same idea. I want to get a greater twist from my hips and shoulders by pivoting on my back foot. My heel rotates into the strike. So be mindful of that during the first several reps of just getting the mechanics down. Making sure my opposite hand is up. Extending my hips or extending my arm forward as I rotate my hips and shoulders. Corkscrewing my wrist to hit with the top two knuckles. Good. From there, speed. Working the speed. And then power. from here, let's add in the hook. So same idea. We're going to continue to cycle through each rep, cycle through each series of reps, focusing on fluidity and technical proficiency on the first cycle, then move through speed, and then move into power. Okay, so with the hook, I'm in my boxing stance, I'm in my lower stance. I'm going to turn my hips and shoulders almost 90 degrees, and at the same time, my elbow is going to come up, my elbow is going to open at the joint. I'm going to turn my knuckles so that my thumb is pointing up. I'm going to rotate my hips and shoulders through. Notice when I do so, and this is just for me, or this is the way that I fight. When I do so, I rotate my back heel slightly. In boxing, traditional Western boxing, and some other martial arts, they'll teach to pivot through on the hook, right? And this is great. This is awesome to get power in the strike, but at what cost? For Muay Thai, because the low kick is so prevalent, especially in America, we need to be mindful that anytime we're exposing the back of my leg or the hamstring, that I'm vulnerable. So I just won't do that. I'll pivot slightly into the hook to make sure that my knee is still loose and not stiff. I don't want to pull anything in my knee joint, but I won't pivot all the way through. Keep that in mind when you're repping on the bag. Just be mindful of the advantage and disadvantage to each strike. So we're going to cycle the lead hook from the boxing stance. And notice that when I throw my hook, I open up on my elbow joint, right? I'm getting longer than I would in a traditional like boxing hook, right? I punch from a kicking range. This is Thai boxing, so keep that in mind. Again, starting off with just the fluidity. Just want to get this hook down. Make it look nice. Elbow up on the point of impact. Notice how my wrist and elbow are in line. My wrist isn't bent and my elbow is not cocked downward. All right, this hand's up. And I keep working. Getting the technique down. Once I have the technique, I'll start to add in the speed. You can load up on the hook. Sometimes, like if I throw a cross, that loads my hook, right? If I don't throw the cross, I can fake the cross, that loads my hook. But I need to be mindful that loading is also a telegraphy. Anytime I rotate my left shoulder, there's a good bet that my partner or my opponent knows which technique I'm gonna throw. So of course I could rotate one way, rotate the other way, and then try to fake them out, but that's for a later class. So, working in the speed, and then we add the power, right? And when you work on the power for the hooks, don't go fast. Really, really work on grounding yourself by bending your knees, gripping the ground with your feet, and throwing those punches hard. Good. Fluidity. Speed. And power. Good. So we've got the jab, the cross, and the lead hook down. Let's work on the rear hook. Same principles. Getting the form down. Throwing my strike. Keeping my elbow up when I land. Rotating my hips and shoulders into the strike. Pivoting on my back foot to turn into the strike. Why pivot on my back foot when I don't pivot on my lead foot? It's much harder to get to my back leg. So it's worth the extra exposure, so to speak, by twisting your back heel to get power into the strike. So cycle through fluidity, technique, Remember to open up on your elbow joint. Don't throw your hook from here. Open. Throw it long. And then from here, we do speed. From there, power. All power, no speed. The speed is going to come with the power, but focus on the power. Good. Same thing with our uppercut technique. When I throw my uppercut, I want to drop my weight, even more so than I am in my boxing stance. Again, as a review, kicking stance, I'm tall stance. Good for boxing if I step in, right? Good for boxing if I shift. Not great for boxing if I'm throwing longer punch combinations, because I'm not grounded. From a taller stance, my feet have a tendency to come up off of the mat, because this is the stance that I kick with. My feet come up off of the mat in order to kick. So having a good understanding and of the differentiation between the tall stance and the punch stance, the low stance, is important. I'm in a punch stance working my uppercuts, and I drop my back knee down almost like I'm lunging to get power in my uppercut. As I come up, I drive up through the floor, gripping the ground like I'm doing a squat, like I'm coming up from a squat. I keep my elbow in, my elbow's in line with my wrist, and I drive up. Same thing on the other side. So we're gonna work that on the back. Focusing on the fluidity. Just getting that down. Shut. Then work speed. Shoot. Then power. Set. Good. Same thing on the other side. We'll work fluidity. Shut. Then speed. Set. Then power. Good. Once you have cycled through all 6 punches, work in each strike individually and focus at random on those different attributes. Sometimes speed, sometimes power, sometimes fluidity, sometimes a combination of all 3. Each round, I want you to do 2 minutes. So you can rewind this video and get instruction on the jab. Work for 2 minutes. Cycle through fluidity, speed, power. 2 minutes of the cross. 2 minutes on the lead hook, 2 minutes on the rear hook, 2 minutes on the uppercut, 2 minutes on the rear uppercut, and then I want you to do 3 2-minute rounds focusing on each strike. 1 strike at a time, sometimes fluidity, sometimes speed, sometimes power, sometimes all the way through. It'll look like this. I'll move for about 30 seconds. Sometimes goes fast, sometimes moves slow and fluid, sometimes powerful. Be mindful of staying too wide in your base, being too bladed in my boxing stance, being too tall in my kicking stance before I punch, right? Good. And you get the picture. So it's all 6 punches. The idea here is that we're developing the punches individually. And then in the next video, I'll teach you some combinations that work great for Muay Thai. so you can string those techniques together into good combos. Okay, that's all I got for you guys in this video. Thank you guys so much. Talk to you later. Peace.